Good morning, everybody. This is Matt Townend, Director of Research and Consulting at Cavell. I'm pleased to welcome you all to our webinar on the impact of Cisco acquiring Broadsoft on the service provider community. Obviously, last week was rather eventful when we attended Broadsoft Connections, and on the first day, the merger was announced. So we've all had a bit of time now to think about the impact of how that's going to be on the service provider community, and we're going to share with you some of our thoughts during this webinar. So, for those who don't know who Cavell is, we're a specialised research and consulting business, been supporting the industry for over 12 years. On the call today, I have myself, I'm the Director of Research Consulting, and Dominic, who is our Senior Analyst. Some of the names of the companies that we've worked with, you can see on the left, but also we've worked with a lot more. So Dom's going to take you through some of the impacts in terms of what we're seeing from the product side, and then I'll come back and join at the end and talk through what our opinion of the announcements are. So over to Dom.
Good morning, everyone. So thank you all for joining the call. It's been quite an eventful week, as Matt has said. This has been one of the most major deals in the telecom markets in recent years. Obviously, early this year, we had the Mitel and ShoreTel deal and the Genbam Sonos deal as well. But this really is going to be a big impact for the service provider community in this space. There's a large number of providers that are using Broadsoft and Cisco as their soft switch platform. So key acquisition facts, it's going to be a $1.9 billion deal, and Cisco are aiming to pay are going to be paying $55 a share in cash. There's still an opt-out clause in this, so the deal hasn't gone through yet. Everyone is talking like it has, but there are still some issues which we'll go through later on around why the deal potentially may not go through. The deal will be hopefully closing in January 2018, and yeah, that's where we are. So a little bit around where Broadsoft are in general. Broadsoft have announced publicly that they have 18 million lines globally. 450,000 of these are on their broad cloud platform. Looking at their split of where the end users are delivered, most of them are delivered by Tier 1 and Tier 2 service providers, 71% of their end users. Interestingly, when you look at this, this really ties in with where Cisco's base is as well. Cisco have a large number of customers which are the Tier 1 providers, so there's quite a lot of crossover in that base. Also, Broadsoft's real focus, though, is in the SME. So where we've seen seats being delivered are towards those customers with less than 50 users. And they have a 32% market share in Western Europe, and 70% of Broadsoft users in this space are delivered into that sub-50 category. There is some signs that they're moving up the stack, though, a little bit. So we have seen some service providers try to deliver to the mid-market now. We've seen some with varying success. So in the future, this could have been a potential difficulty and competitor to Cisco in that large enterprise, but we haven't seen it too much yet. So a quick look at around Broadsoft product portfolio. Traditionally, they've been selling BroadWorks platform to their service provider customers. And a few years ago, released their Broad Cloud offering, which is their SaaS offering. They've been looking over the last few years to move more and more to the cloud, and they've been positioning their Broad Cloud offering to service providers as a software licensing model. At Connections, they announced that they have been offering a SaaS model, offering UC1 over the top of BroadWorks. So they've really been focusing on building this applications portfolio to deliver to their service providers and starting to get some traction. If you look at their products there, they've really focused on their UC1, their Team1, and their CC1, so their team application and their contact center solution going alongside their UC products as well. At Connections, they were really also focusing on their increased emphasis on their channel support system. So looking at their Powered by Broadsoft brand, which is their going through their channel, through their service providers, helping with go-to-market, so delivering materials, sales and sales enablement tools, helping to focus really on onboarding, so delivering training, installation and migration services to their service provider, and also helping their service providers with adoption. So delivering customer support, analytics reporting, amongst other well. They've also been focusing on this new broad cloud delivery model, where they've been delivering broad cloud as a SaaS model over the top. And they also announced at Connections that they've a new partnership with Cisco to deliver Cisco phones to the Broadsoft base. Interestingly, this was done before the acquisition, but ties in quite nicely with what they're looking at doing now. So moving on and looking at what Cisco's proposition looks like in the market. So Cisco have really been focused on their HCS platform, which is delivered to tier 1 service providers and used to target large enterprise customers. If you look at where their cloud seats are delivered, 88% of those are to users with over 500 endpoints on that. And they have a 48% market share in Western Europe in the over 500 market. They also have a long history of acquisition. So they acquired WebEx 10 years ago for $3.2 billion and recently made their 200th purchase. That is not just in the voice space, but in their whole portfolio. Interestingly, they've been really focused in the last year or so on moving towards a recurring revenue model. So moving away from offering on-premise equipment to their customers. When you look at the Broadsoft base and see that actually 450,000 of their customers were recurring, 450 of their service provider delivered seats were on recurring revenue and not perpetual licenses, which we typically deliver through Broadworks. It's interesting because this deal doesn't really focus too much on, this deal doesn't really give Cisco that recurring revenue model yet. So there could be potentially an issue when they start potentially trying to force their service providers to a recurring revenue model in the future. So a few quotes from Cisco around this. What we've really got out of Cisco from their quotes that they've been doing to their investor relations is that they will be focusing on their service provider as a key channel to their end users, especially in the SME segment. One of the other things they've been really looking at is with this deal is the ability to broaden their portfolio and offering new applications to their customers. When you look at Broadsoft, they positioned, Cisco positioned Broadsoft in their new portfolio as really being delivering to the SME through their service provider channel. Although the brand is still going to be a Cisco brand throughout. So the Broadsoft brand looks like it's going to be going away over the next few months. Broadsoft are going to be delivering to the SME still, and the enterprise will still be delivered through the HCS solution. What's going to be interesting is that mid-market space, where you can see both service provider and enterprise will be delivered there. So there will be some Cisco being scaled down, and Broadsoft will be scaled up into that space. Looking a little bit now around actual what features and what services delivered into each of these. So on the target markets, Broadsoft products, as we've said, are targeted to smaller business, and the target market for Cisco has been that larger 1,000+ employee space. The real interesting thing here is around what happens to the collaboration teams and mobility space. We've seen in the Cisco side that Spark's starting to take away from the Jabber base, and we're going to be seeing Spark Voice. It's likely to be withdrawn from this. What's going to be interesting is where the Team One and UC1 fit in this portfolio in the long term. Looking at the meetings and conferencing, Cisco already said that the WebEx service will be pushed into the Broadsoft solution. So UC1 Meet was announced at Broadsoft Connections. It would be unlikely if they continue with that, considering that WebEx's investment in this space will be pushed down to the Broadsoft solution. On the contact center area as well, Cisco have been very complimentary around Broadsoft's CC1 product and in all their notes around why they made the acquisition. It wasn't just for the call control, but it was also for the contact center capabilities as well. So we do believe that contact center is going to be important, and Broadsoft contact center and CC1 application will be delivered higher up the stack as well. We reached out to a few of the vendors as well. Genband moved, as you may have heard yesterday, were announced have been moved to Ribbon and rebranded under that due to the merger with them and Sonos. And Genband really been talking about the opportunity to see their Candy platform's potential for an alternative provider for service providers in the SME. Carrier's looking at, well, do we want to keep all of our eggs in one basket with a supplier? Maybe looking, and Patrick does believe that Genband will become a viable solution for those SME. Centile also has that same point of view, that they compete with Broadsoft and the SME, and there will be an opportunity for service providers to look at a different platform in that SME space. They're going to be competing with Broadsoft in there. There may be a bit of confusion as well with service providers looking at what products get delivered through what portfolio, and especially the channels will have to get aligned to where they're going to be focusing. There is also potential of reduction in the agility for Cisco as well, delivering through the Broadsoft base. Polycom still believes there's a strong opportunity to sell handsets, and thinks that Broadsoft's going to be a strong channel in the future, and they have been in the past. It'll be interesting to see whether Cisco handsets are marketed going forward in the future. I'm now going to hand over to Matt, who's going to take us through kind of our views on the acquisition from a Cavell point of view. So over to Matt.
Great, thanks, Dom. So I think the top line thought is that this acquisition is really about filling a hole in the portfolio. So it was clear that Cisco, although it had tried on a number of occasions to come down the market with its SP offerings, doing things like HGS, shared infrastructure, potentially doing Spark Voice, it had never really filled that SME space. So this makes absolute sense in terms of filling the SME space to the service provider. Also, it makes a lot of sense in terms of target market. As we saw before, they basically target similar service providers. And there was a fear that if Broadsoft started and managed to go up the market in the service provider, it could have become a real competitor to Cisco. I guess the only hint of caution, we got a feeling at Broadsoft Connections that it was a goodbye event when this deal was definitely going to go through. But we've all seen deals like this not go through. We don't have to look back too far to Mitel and Polycom to see such a situation. There may well be some discussion about the competitive position, as Dom showed you, in terms of the competitive position of Broadsoft in Europe, and we'll wait to see how that plays out. But obviously, if we do get into a situation with the under competitive review, then that may delay the deal. Overall, we think it will probably go through, but we're not completely sure that it will be in the time frame that's currently being discussed as Q1. We'll wait and see. The other thing that's happened that happens quite regularly in these situations is obviously we've seen a couple of what I would call ambulance chasing legal firms questioning the process and the price. And there's been quite a bit of talk about whether the price represents a good value for shareholders. On the whole, it appears to from our point of view, but we'll see if there's any underbids that come in. Obviously, there's a reasonably large opt-out amount of clause which may stop that. When talking to service providers, and as you can imagine, seeing Connections and being who we are, we had multiple calls from service providers interested in understanding the position. One of the concerns was really about agility. So they were used to working with Broadsoft, who were able to innovate quickly, to be really agile, and agile on their commercials as well. So used to working directly with a very agile business. And I guess that was one of the areas of biggest concern is as Broadsoft gets consumed into Cisco, will they be able to still work in that way? So it'll be interesting to see how Cisco chooses to integrate this business and whether it can enable that to keep that still that agile approach. The other major concern, not surprising, is pricing. We know that being a smaller business, Broadsoft on occasion could do some very aggressive pricing deals on licenses, etc. And particularly not only to large service providers, so some of the smallest guys, the tier twos and smaller guys were able to demand quite good pricing arrangements and were able to work very closely with the team to get those. And I guess there's some concern, particularly amongst those tier twos and smaller providers, whether they'll get subsumed into a large contract with Cisco that won't give them the flexibility, and ultimately whether the pricing will go up, and also whether there'll be even more pressure to move away from the Broadworks platform that they've all invested heavily into more of a recurring revenue approach, as Don mentioned, which is Cisco's main focus, or one of their focuses currently. I guess the other concern is Cisco's done very well in terms of building a channel distribution approach in the market. So everybody knows, and it's quite quoted as, you know, as one of the best channel models in the market, with a very strong tiering and Cisco Gold partners, etc. And I guess the smaller SPs are questioning whether they'll lose some of the interaction with the teams that they've had before, and whether they ultimately may end up having to interact in that traditional channel approach. Also, what Broadsoft had done was built a very good alternative distribution model, working with some very aggressive and agile distribution and SI partners. And some of those will be crucial to Cisco's future success in this space. I think, for having private conversations with Cisco, that they kind of understand that that's important. So my feeling is they may have to change some of their distribution models to reflect this acquisition. I guess not the funny thing, but when we were at Broadsoft Connections and you look at who were the main sponsors, and we see 3 of the main handset manufacturers being key sponsors of that event, it kind of highlights the importance of that has been of an open platform for Broadsoft, selling multiple handsets and having an ecosystem of other partners who developed around that. And that's been kind of crucial to the success of Broadsoft. And I think the ability for Cisco to maintain that is going to be really important. So obviously we saw from the Polycom statement that they are sure that this will continue. And we hope, and all the intentions and the statements that you saw earlier from Broadsoft is that it will, from Cisco, is that they will keep that. But we'll have to wait to see. And it's one of the areas definitely of concern. As Dom mentioned earlier, there is this general drive towards recurring revenues. And it's normally, when we talked to Broadsoft about why they were pushing their customers towards broad cloud, it was about the ability to innovate quicker in a cloud environment. Now, why we buy that argument, it's interesting that a lot of the service providers have resisted to some degree, although there was definite momentum within Broadsoft to moving towards that model. The question is, how will that be impacted by the Cisco acquisition? So how will Cisco deal with broad cloud? Will they see broad cloud just as a development platform, or will they see it as it was being seen as a go-to-market platform as well? So it'll be interesting to see how they deal with the broad cloud environment. As we saw, not surprisingly, from the competitors, I guess, in their comments, one of the other major concerns will be about single sourcing. So a lot of, as we said, there's quite a lot of crossover in the tier 1 environment, certainly in Europe, where the tier 1s have taken Broadsoft, and they've also got Cisco HCS. So I know there is some concern about, if Cisco don't react correctly to the points that we've raised above, will they really want to have a single a single source environment? So the alternative providers are getting ready to take that battle to Cisco and to Broadsoft. So on the whole, I think our position is very clear. This is a product acquisition. It fills a clear product gap. Although there is some crossover in some of the areas of collaboration, most of those look fairly sensible decisions, and we can probably pretty easily predict what the new portfolio is going to look like. There's a lot of sense in terms of both of the organizations were focused on service provider. So the target audiences make a lot of sense. The routes to market make lots of sense. We think on the whole that the deal will complete. We wouldn't be surprised if it comes under some review or it comes under the eyes of some people on the competitive position. And really, it's going to be interesting to watch how Cisco really look to integrate Broadsoft. That's really where the success of this deal is going to come. I think if they just try and assume it into their traditional organization structures and approaches, they might lose some of the essence of what has made this business successful. So we will keep a close eye on how that manifests itself as we go through the acquisition in the coming months. As you can see, we've got over 100 people on the call. So I'm not going to open it up for direct questions because that would be what we call chaos. But what we will be more than willing to do is take any specific questions that anybody has offline. We've also taken a recording of this, so we'll be happy to share that. Also, if you want some more insight, a number of you already attend our, used to be called European VoIP Summit, we now call it Cloud Comm Summit in London. Last year we had over 250 people from 60 service providers, taking place on the 8th of March. Keep an eye open, go on our website, you can book there. I'm sure to have some major people, hopefully the deal will be done by then, and we'll have some people from Cisco and Broadsoft talking about the future and where they're going. Also, lots of people are asking us for insight into the various markets that they operate in, and we provide individual market shares by platform, by region. So with that, I hope you found this interesting. I'm gonna thank Dom for his contributions. And if you have any questions, you can see our contact details, both mine and Dom's there. Please feel free to drop us an email, and we look forward to answering them. And we look forward to working in the future. So thank you very much for participating, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.